Good readers visualize when they read. They create the scene of the story in their heads and imagine the story as they read it. Good writers make visualizing an easy job. Good writers include details about how a story looks, sounds, feels, smells, and tastes. It's up to the readers to understand the figurative language and create the scene in their heads. There are all kinds of figurative language: synecdoche, metonymy, hyperbole, symbol, metaphor, and simile, personification, imagery, and irony, to name a few. Let's talk about 4: metaphor, hyperbole, personification, and imagery. A metaphor identifies something in the scene as being similar to something unrelated. Writers compare something in the scene to something easy for the readers to imagine. Readers use the comparison to make the scene in their heads clearer and more detailed. A writer could say, "The stars and moon were out," and let the reader try to imagine the sky. A good writer shows the reader the sky. Alexander Solzhenitsyn described the night sky in his book A Day in the Life of Ivan Denisovich using a metaphor. He said, "In our village, folks say God crumbles up the old moon into stars. Stars are not made of old moons, and God doesn't crumble up moons. Readers know that moons and stars both give light at night, and know that stars look like tiny pieces of moon." The metaphor shows how the sky looks from Siberia, helping readers create the picture in their heads. "The pieces I am, she gathered them and gave them back to me in all the right order," is a metaphor from Toni Morrison in her book, Beloved. The narrator compares herself to something broken into pieces and put back together by someone else. Morrison's readers know what broken things look like, and the comparison helps them understand how the narrator feels. The readers feel the relief of being put together again. A simile is a special kind of metaphor. The writer compares two unrelated things, just as in all metaphors, but uses the words like or as to make the comparison. Langston Hughes writes, "For poems are like rainbows, they escape you quickly," in his poem The Big Sea. Poems aren't rainbows, and Hughes doesn't say they are the same thing. He says they are like each other, and then explains why they are alike. His readers can use their knowledge about rainbows, that rainbows can't be caught easily, to figure out what Hughes is saying about poems, that they can't be understood in one reading. Another type of figurative language is hyperbole. Hyperbole is a wildly exaggerated, sometimes humorous statement that isn't meant to be believed literally. Almost everyone uses hyperbole in everyday conversation when we say things like, "Mom, you never let me do anything." Some writers use it to help their readers make sense of a scene. An author could say, "The boy thought the girl was very cool," to explain how he feels about her. The readers might be able to imagine his crush on her, but good writers show the reader how the boy feels using figurative language. J.D. Salinger helps his readers feel the way a young boy feels about a girl in his short story, A Girl I Knew. The narrator says, "She wasn't doing a thing that I could see, except standing there, leaning on the balcony railing, holding the universe together." Readers know that girls don't hold universes together. In this scene, Salinger exaggerates the girl's power over the universe to show her power over the boy, who thinks she is very cool. Often, words like nothing, always, everything, or never are clues to hyperbole. In Harper Lee's novel To Kill a Mockingbird, the narrator describes the people in her town using hyperbole. People moved slowly then. There was no hurry, for there was nowhere to go, nothing to buy, and no money to buy it with. Nothing to see outside the boundaries of Macomb County. The readers know that, of course, there are places outside of Macomb County, but the hyperbole helps them feel the isolation and even the poverty of the people in the county. Sometimes a writer will give human characteristics to something not human. Because readers are human, they can relate more to these characteristics, making it easy to imagine the scene. We often think of death with human characteristics. We picture death as a man in a black robe, carrying a scythe, although death is not a tangible thing at all. In her poem, Because I Could Not Stop for Death, Emily Dickinson speaks of death as a human. Because I could not stop for death, he kindly stopped for me. The carriage held but just ourselves, and immortality. In this poem, death rides in a carriage with the speaker of the poem. The readers have no trouble imagining this scene because they are so familiar with the personification. A writer could say, during the Great Depression, people were very poor. The readers who know history well might be able to imagine how the people felt. Good writers help readers feel poor. It's common for corporations and organizations to be personified. During the Great Depression, many people lost their homes when they couldn't pay the mortgage. John Steinbeck, in his novel The Grapes of Wrath, shows how the banks were seen as the bad guys. The western states nervous under the beginning change, Texas and Oklahoma, Kansas and Arkansas, New Mexico, Arizona, California. A single family moved from the land. Pa borrowed money from the bank, and now the bank wants the land. Banks can't actually want anything. Banks have no feelings. Steinbeck's readers understand the fear people had of the banks by giving the banks human emotions of greed and desire. Readers easily visualize scenes if they are given lots of details about it. Good writers include lots of imagery in their writing. Imagery is writing specifically about how a scene looks, sounds, smells, feels, or tastes. Jonathan Safran Foer wants his readers to feel the way his character feels. In his novel Extremely Loud and Incredibly Close, he says, "Sometimes I can feel my bones straining under the weight of all the lives I'm not living." The narrator regrets all the things he cannot do because he can only live one life. The readers know how he feels because the readers have felt their bones straining when they carry something heavy. George Orwell uses imagery to show the reader what the scene looks like. In his novel 1984, he says, "Outside, even through the shut window pane, the world looked cold. Down in the street, little eddies of wind were whirling dust and torn paper into spirals, and though the sun was shining and the sky a harsh blue, there seemed to be no color in anything, except the posters that were plastered everywhere." The readers picture the scene through the window because they know lots of details, like dust and paper in the wind and posters all over. These writers, and all good writers, use figurative language to help the readers visualize the story. Good writers want their readers to feel like they are part of the story, seeing and hearing and feeling what the characters see and hear and feel. Watch for figurative language when you read, and let it help you imagine the story in your head.